Welcome to the Herald Democrat Sports Podcast. I'm the sports editor of the Herald Democrat, Jason Del Rosa, and you're listening to the latest edition of the Herald Democrat Sports Podcast. The middle of December has arrived. Week 16 of the high school football season has arrived, and that means that we have reached the state semifinals. 4 teams left in each division above the 6-man level, because 6-man's down to the final 2. They know who's playing in their championship games. We have 1 team left. It's the team that's been the last team standing almost a decade now, and we will talk about it all here on the Herald Democrat Sports Podcast. So we had 2 teams playing last week. 2 teams in Texoma got to December, and they played local games. Really good crowds for both, despite the weather. It was actually colder on Thursday than it was on Friday. I got a chance to go to both games because of the fact that they were on separate days, which I was very thankful for, and very local, which was great. Like I said, for really good crowds at both stadiums. But unfortunately, we had 1 team advance and 1 team come up short. Because we only have the 1 team left, we'll talk about the team that had their season come to an end. That was the Collinsville Pirates in their 2A Division II Region II final contest against Munster in that District 8 2A rematch. Unfortunately, not only did the Pirates lose, it was not anywhere close to what the initial matchup was 5 weeks ago, when it was tied going into the 4th quarter and Munster scored a couple touchdowns to win that game 34-20. This one got out of hand early. Munster making some big plays on both sides of the ball, and they were able to win this game 54-14 and advance to the state semifinals against Groover. This was a game that got off to a very fast start. Collinsville gets the ball first. They go down and score on a 4th down play. Munster gets the ball. They go down and score on a 4th down play. We're less than 4 minutes into the game. It's 7-7, and it's looking like game on. This is what we expected of the rematch. Back and forth. These teams coming up with big plays when they have to, and unfortunately, that's where things started to snowball for Collinsville. Their second possession of the game ends up being a safety after a bad snap on a punt. Then on the ensuing free kick, Munster gets really good field position. First play scores. They score again before the end of the first quarter as well, and they're up 23-7. They extend that to 40-7 at halftime with 2 touchdowns and a field goal in the second quarter. One of those being a 94-yard interception return in the final minute right before halftime. Collinsville was going down. It was already 33-7, and things obviously were not going Collinsville's way. They get inside the 10-yard line, and you're thinking, okay, if they can make it 33-14 and regroup, maybe there's a chance to get into it. Munster was getting the ball to start the second half, but if you get a stop and then you go score, and then it's 33-21, you have an opportunity there to make it a game again, and you have the whole second half left to go. But that interception happens, so instead of 33-14, you have 40-7 at halftime. Munster tacks on 2 more touchdowns in the first 3 minutes of the second half, and Collinsville ends up getting a touchdown with a little over 3 minutes left in the game to get to that 54-14 score. From a stats perspective, we talked about the last time this was a game where Munster obviously took advantage of turnovers. They won that turnover battle 3-0. They won this turnover battle 2-0. And again, that doesn't even count the safety with them getting points there. And again, from a from a stat perspective, for Collinsville, J.J. Jenkins, 29 of 49 passing for 270 yards and a touchdown with 2 interceptions. Brandon Cantu, 9 carries for 47 yards and a touchdown. Landry Spivey, 8 catches for 87 yards and a score. Chad Davidson, 4 catches for 64 yards. Jackson Spivey, 7 catches for 41 yards. And Munster didn't run a lot of plays. When you look at the touchdowns that they had, they only finished with 36 plays in this game, and Collinsville had over 70. They had 78 plays. The big thing obviously was Collinsville was able to move the ball to some extent. They had some drives. They were grinding out the clock. You know, they would go 50 yards or 60 yards, but it took them 5 minutes, 6 minutes, and basically all of Munster's touchdowns were big plays. You had a 29-yard touchdown run, a 34-yard touchdown run, a 73-yard touchdown pass. Obviously, we talked about the interception return that was almost the length of the field. And then the last 2 touchdowns, 51-yard touchdown pass and a 42-yard touchdown pass. Kason Carney, 9 of 13 passing for 267 yards and 3 touchdown passes. And he also started the scoring with that 29-yard touchdown run. So it was one of those games where, you have the expectation going in and it totally flips. I don't think anybody, potentially saw this coming just off of the first meeting. And of course, we talked about going in, what was the chess match going to be? Were you going to see teams totally change things up because of what happened in the first meeting? Do you stick with what worked in the first meeting, assuming that you're good enough at running those particular plays or that particular scheme that it's going to work no matter what in this matchup? I do think some injuries for Collinsville hurt. Obviously, the injury a couple weeks ago to Cash Morgan was something that they were able to figure out, but obviously, I mean, he's a great player, and to lose him hurt. I think the fact that Garrett Trevino was not 100% with an ankle injury, that he did not play one single snap on offense. They kept him mainly for defensive purposes. Now, the way the game played out, if they would have used him in some spots on offense, would it have kept the game closer for a little bit? I don't know. Like I said, Munster gets up 23-7 after the first quarter, and you're trying to play catch up immediately. You're forced to throw, and we know Collinsville likes to throw. Anyway, that's the basis of their offense, but they've always had him in their back pocket of, okay, let's put him in there and let him run the ball. He's tough, he's physical. Let's kind of wear them down a little bit. His yards per carry was really good for somebody who got very limited touches on offense because they could pick their spots with him. And I think they just were worried about just putting too much stress on that injury and have him just focus on defense, to where obviously I think maybe that kind of changed some things. Although, Chase Shepard is a guy for them who has come on over the last couple months of the season as a freshman. He had 14 carries for 41 yards in this one, a couple of catches as well, averaging 5 yards a catch. So that's basically like, just from scrimmage, he had 15 touches or 18 touches for 60 yards. So it's just one of those things. Like I said, I think it got out of hand to the point where we didn't get to see what was a really good game the last time, tied going to the fourth quarter. So Munster's in a position, like I said, playing Groover in the state semifinals this week. We said it, I think, going into the round of 8, and in some regions you can talk about going into the round of the with the final 16 going into the region semifinals of everybody's really good. Maybe there's one team out of the four in each region that you can look at and say, well, that team is clearly the fourth best team. And when you get to the final four, everybody's really good. So I don't know what Munster's going to do this week. I don't know what Munster's going to do potentially next week. If they do go on and win the whole thing, which again right now they have a minimum 25% chance to do that, and they've looked very good during this run. Obviously, what they did last week against Albany as the two-time defending champ to turn this matchup that was a close game into a 40-point victory. They're obviously peaking at the right time, playing as well as anybody in 2A Division II. They have a chance to go win this thing, and if they do, it will be the third year that Collinsville gets to the state quarterfinals. They're one of the 8 teams left, and they got stuck playing the best team left out of the 8. They finished 12-2 again. Third straight year they have gone 12-2. Out of those 6 losses, 2 of them were to Albany. 2 of them were to Munster this year. They have been among the best of the best in this 3-year stretch. It just so happens that they've been stuck potentially in the region with the team that wins it every year. And that's the luck of the draw. That's the bracket. That's the what are the odds? It obviously sucks for Collinsville because they've got a group, especially this year, that we've talked all year long, overlooked at the start. How good was this team going to be? How are they going to fill the holes of that senior class? And they got all the way back to being one of the 8 teams left in the state. And I think that says a lot about this group. I think that says obviously a lot about the program at Collinsville under Coach Patterson, that they have been able to put together this 3-year run. And it just stinks that this is the case where you're stuck in a region with, if it's not the best team, it's one of the best teams that you couldn't get out. And we're going to talk about that a little bit with Gunner next, but you can see it all around the state. You look at some of these teams that over the last couple of years, they dominate a region, whether you're a Duncanville or a South Oak Cliff or a Denton Ryan or an Aledo, that you're stuck in that region with the region, with one of the, not just the region champ, but the best team in the state year after year, and you can't do anything about it because of geography. So it stinks for Collinsville that they've had these 3 great seasons, 3 of the best seasons in school history. Nobody has won more games in a season than what these Pirates have done the last 3 years. Only one team has made it to the state semifinals, like we talked about coming in. That was the 2000 team. They obviously did not have as good a record, but they were able to get to the Final Four. That's the only other season better than what these last 3 seasons have been for Collinsville. And they're going to lose some key people like they did last year, not as many. They're going to have their quarterback back. They're going to have some weapons at receiver back. They're going to have some weapons in the backfield back. And they're not going to be overlooked. They're not going to be an afterthought because of what they're going to lose to graduation. But again, the problem is going to be you are not just stuck in the region, you are in district with potentially the eventual state champion. You are in a district, at least for one more year, with the region champion. Now, the good news for that is obviously you go on the other side of the bracket. So you can make a run all the way to the region final before you see them again. But you have Albany still out there lurking. You have some very good teams in this region. I think Wellington showed how good they were to play Collinsville as tough as they did. Windthorst is always a good team. We've seen what they were able to do, get to the region semifinals. And so it's not going to be easy. but the talent obviously is there. And if they can do it in this season when everybody kind of expected them to take the drop off, then the bar has been set to get back, at the very least, get back to the Final Four, see what your matchup is, but to try to get back here again and find a way to break through. And I know it's got to be frustrating, and I know you got to be sitting there going, man, you've had 3 chances and we just have not been able to get it done, and that's just unfortunate. And you would have hoped at least one time they would have been able to get through at least once just to experience that. Unfortunately, we've had some teams around here that have gotten this far and then they get knocked. What Whitesboro, one of your next door neighbors, Whitesboro feels your pain. They got to this point 2 years in a row and had to deal with a district rival in Brock. Brock beat them both times, and it's the nature of sports, because that's going to happen. It's the nature of the bracket. The bracket is the bracket, and you can only go as far sometimes as you can. And unfortunately, this was the ending point for Collinsville. But again, another great season, to be one of the last teams standing, to get into December is, you don't want to say a number one goal, but obviously anything past Thanksgiving is really good. If you get, like I said, if you're in December, you are one of the top 8 teams. And then the question is, can you be one of the top 4 teams? Can you be in a state championship game? And Collinsville has come really close to knocking on that door. Hopefully they get back to this point again, and they can find a way to knock it down and get through next year. So Collinsville gets eliminated. We knew for sure we had a team that was going to be playing next week because Gunner played on Thursday. So we were just waiting to see if Collinsville could join them after they played on Friday over at Munson Stadium. So Thursday in the 3A Division II Region 2 final down in Melissa, which is a extremely nice setup at their new stadium. That was the first game I got to do there. I'm going to go back there for Denison's game in district play. They didn't open it in time for the last Denison trip to Melissa when they were in district a couple years ago. So I got to go down there and check it out and see the amenities and see what it was all about. And it was a great atmosphere, ton of people. Like I said, parking lots were full. It was what you would expect from the crowd for a game like this. The only thing that was a question going in was the weather. It was extremely cold. It was very windy, and you don't want to say how much that affected one team or the other, but it was obviously going to be a factor in this game. But it was a traditional Gunner holiday outcome, because this has become a staple of the last 9 years in this run, where Gunner has continually played the same people, usually at the same point in the playoffs, and the Tigers come away with a 33-7 win. This was a defensive struggle, I would say, for a chunk of this game. Gunner did what Gunner does, and that's take advantage of mistakes. That's take advantage of turnovers. That's take advantage of field position. And you do that, even if it's a couple times, they will kill you with it. And the final score, you don't want to say indicative of, you say they dominated them or whatever. It was 33-0 going into the final minute. Holiday scored with 12 seconds left. They were that close to being shut out. It was against, obviously it wasn't against the first team. Holiday could not run the ball. They had 31 carries for 27 yards. They had some mistakes on special teams. They put themselves behind the 8 ball in a couple of scenarios. And like I said, Gunner was able to take advantage. And to give credit to Holiday, Gunner did not have a huge effort offensively. But again, like I said, you give them a short field and they're going to kill you with it. If you give them if you allow them to pin you deep with a punt, Or there was one play that almost turned into a turnover, but Holiday was able to keep the ball, but they started at the 3-yard line, and then you get a bad punt, and then the first play after that is a touchdown. That's how Gunner will kill you. And that's what happened in this game. So the stats are not super impressive from an offensive standpoint. Preston Tarpley 11 of 16 passing for 111 yards. Jay Campidi 8 carries for 66 yards and a touchdown. Brock Body 11 carries for 55 yards and a touchdown. Colin Peacock had 2 catches for 58 yards. Dylan Tokar's his only carry was a 21-yard touchdown run. And Mitchell Gage had a 98-yard kickoff return to open the second half. And Tarpley also kicked a pair of field goals, one of them from 40 yards. So this game got off to an interesting start. We've talked about the Gunner Holiday dynamic. Gunner has never lost to Holiday. It's now 8-0. Holiday has never scored more than 14 points against Gunner. That obviously continued because this was almost a shutout. So if you're Holiday, you got to find a way to keep it close, and you've got to have a defensive effort that's worthy of making it a game in the second half. And after the first quarter, it looked like that was going to be the case. Gunner's first 2 possessions, fumble and 3 and out. Gunner scores late in the first quarter on that Tokar's 21-yard keeper. Going behind center, getting the direct snap and scoring. It's only 7-0, and you're thinking, okay, that's exactly what Holiday wanted. The worst thing that they saw what Gunner did to Jacksboro, and they said we can't be down 28-0 4 minutes into the game, because then it's going to be over. But Holiday could not get anything going. They tried to be aggressive on a 4th down call in their territory early in the second quarter. Now it's 7-0. If you punt and they drive the length of the field, that's one thing. But Holiday tried to go for it at their 42. They didn't get it. It was an incomplete pass. First play, Campidi runs it in 42 yards for the touchdown. So now it's 14-0, and you didn't give them, you didn't force them to drive at any length. And then from there, like I said, Gunner slowly starts to pull away. They take advantage of mistakes when it comes to like I said, on the special teams. They get the field goal from Tarpley. They get the Brock Body touchdown run. So with 4.5 minutes to go in the second quarter, it's 24-0. Holiday's driving. You've got a chance to cut into the lead. You got a chance to make it 24-7. Literally the last play of the first half. Tip pass. Cam Doty comes down with the interception. Almost runs it back, but at the very least, you're able to keep them out of the end zone, keep them from getting any momentum. Now they're going, that was our best chance of the half to get some points. We come away with nothing. It's 24-0 at halftime. Then we come out in the second half. First play, kickoff return. Mitchell Gage brings it back 98 yards, gets a block down the right sideline, cuts it back across the field, gets down the left sideline, gets tackled going, there's a tackle as he's going into the end zone. Obviously, if he's tackled down at the 1 or 2, it still is a great return, but he's able to finish it off 18 seconds into the third quarter. Gunner goes for 2, doesn't get it, but now it's 30-0. And if any chance that Holiday thought they were going to win or have a chance to get back in the game, it's over now, because you essentially handed them a free touchdown right away to open the second half. It's basically like you went into halftime down 30-0. And again, Holiday just was not able to get anything going. They did hold the ball for a little bit. And like I said, I think Gunner sort of went into a shell at that point. It was 30-0. they knew that their defense was, playing great. They were able to get another Tarpley field goal with 2:20 left in the game, and that stretch between the kickoff return and that field goal, there wasn't a whole lot going on. And I don't want to say that was by design or not, but I feel like at that point, the next time Gunner got the ball back after for their first actual possession of the second half, I think it was just sort of like, hey, can we just sort of get out of here, run some clock? If we have to punt, that's fine, whatever, and be able to get to the next game. I don't know for certain. I didn't talk to Coach Frizzell about that specifically, but there was a major injury in the first half when Colin Peacock made one of those catches. It was a deep pass down the left sideline. Gunner was at its 4-yard line. Beautiful pass from Tarpley. Peacock catches it in stride for 46 yards. He's just shy of midfield, but on the tackle, injures his knee. It is a significant injury. He's obviously out, not just for this week, but if Gunner is able to advance to the championship game, his season's done. And obviously that's that's a huge blow for Gunner because of what he has meant to them on both sides of the ball. He's been one of, if not their best receiving threat, with some huge plays there, including the one, like I said, he got hurt on. Obviously, the day before the game he had signed with Baylor, he's going to go there as a defensive back, and he's one of the best defensive backs in the state, and he's had some huge plays there. And you just feel really bad for him. And the last couple of years, he had that great sophomore year, was the defensive MVP of the championship game in that first championship. And since then, he's had a broken collarbone 3 times, broke it last year in non-district play against Brock, then broke it in the second game of the playoffs against City View, and had to miss the rest of that championship run, and goes to state 7-on-7. He's back. He's healthy. He's playing, and injures it again. It's the same collarbone. It's not like these are 2 different collarbones. In each of these times, it's the same collarbone. And then so his season started a little bit later because of that. And then this happens in the region final, and it stinks for a kid who, when he's on the field, he's obviously, if he's not the best player on the field, he's one of the best players on the field. And he's just been snake bitten for the past 2 years, especially when you break your collarbone 3 times in 9 months. I mean, that's just ridiculously bad luck. And then to have this happen, it's a shame for him that unfortunately he's going to have to miss the last couple of games of his, or at least one more game of his high school career on the sidelines because of the injuries. And so I wonder that since that happened in the first half, did that alter sort of the thinking for the second half of, hey, let's just get out of here. Let's just, we're playing so well on defense. We don't need guys to get tackled or make a play or try to make a play, and then they get banged up or hurt or whatever. We've got at least one more game, and we hope we have 2 more games to go. And so I wonder if that was part of the thinking there. But again, this was, I think once it got to 24-0, you kind of really sat there and said, Holiday's got nothing firepower-wise to be able to get into this, because they hadn't shown anything in the entire first half that really made you think this was going to be a game. And then, like I said, once it got to 30-0, it was almost done at that point. We didn't see Holiday. I don't think Holiday scored 5 touchdowns in the last. Maybe they scored 5 touchdowns in the last 5 games against Gunner. They weren't going to do 5.5. The way Gunner's defense has been against them, during this run. So Gunner advances to the Class 3A Division II state semifinals, where they will play Wall. This game is at 4 p.m. on Friday. We got an afternoon action. I wonder if that's in part due to the fact that one, this is going to be less than a week until the state championship game for the winner, but also for those who have looked at the schedule ahead to plan, because we get to do that. Gunner, the 3A Division II state championship game is at 3 o'clock on Thursday the 19th. So perhaps this is one of those things where we're going to play early in the We're going to play early in the afternoon. We've got a road trip. We're gonna treat it like we're going to be going down to Arlington. Obviously, this is a little bit further because we're going to Abilene Christian University, which for Gunner people is home away from home, because it seems like every year now we are playing at Abilene Christian for a Gunner semifinal. I believe this is the 5th straight year that Gunner has played somebody at Abilene Christian, and that's just unfortunately, that's the luck of the draw with playing some of these teams out in West Texas. Obviously, last year was at Abilene Christian. Let's see, 2022 was at Abilene Christian. 2021 was at Abilene Christian. 2020 was at Abilene Christian. Yes, so this will be the 4th straight one at Abilene Christian. 2021, 22, 23, 24. This is the 5th straight one. So that road is it's a familiar road to get out there. And it's an unfamiliar opponent because Wall was able to knock off Canadian 49-3. So you have 12-2 Gunner against 13-1 Wall. I said last week I thought this might be a chance to see somebody different at this point. If Canadian had won, this would have been the 8th time in the 9 trips in a row that Gunner has made to the state semifinals that Canadian has been the Region 1 champion as well. 2021, Lubbock Roosevelt got out of the region, and so that's the only other opponent until this year that Gunner had faced besides Canadian. And obviously Wall earned it. Obviously beating somebody 49-3. The interesting thing about that matchup, I don't remember if I mentioned it last week. Canadian had beaten Wall the previous 2 region finals in 2022 and 2023. So obviously this was a big rematch game for them. This was a huge game, a huge win for the Wall program. They have not made it to the semifinals since 2016. They're planning to go to the championship game for the first time since 2013. They've never won a championship. This obviously has a chance to be the best team in school history when you look at what they've done. The game against Canadian last week, Canadian went down and got a field goal on its first possession, and then obviously never scored again. And that says a lot about what Wall's defense is. Now, obviously, I don't know if Canadian is as good as some of the Canadian teams that we've seen in the past. They did not score a touchdown. Canadian did in a game for the first time since 2006. So 18 years. It had been 18 years since they had not reached the end zone in a game. Obviously, they have scored points in some of those games or been shut out. But they had not scored a touch. They had not been held to not scoring a touchdown in almost 18 years. So give credit to Wall. They're obviously putting together a great season. They've won 12 in a row. Their only loss was to Brownwood back in week 2. And Brownwood, that game was 17-7. And Brownwood is a 4A Division 1 team. They finished 6-5. They made the playoffs. They lost in the first round of the 4A Division 1 bracket. And if that sounds familiar, playing somebody bigger, obviously that's what Gunner did. That's why Gunner has 2 losses, because of them playing Anna in week 2 and then turning around and playing Salina in week 3. I will point out Salina is still playing. They are in the 4A Division 1 semifinals, and they are actually playing in Abilene as well, playing at a different stadium. They're over at Shotwell for their game, for their 4A Division 1 semifinal against, they thought it was going to probably be Stephenville, I think that was the team that everybody thought or the matchup that everybody wanted to see. Obviously, people know Stephenville is a big powerhouse, but they're playing West Plains, who obviously is a team that we're not familiar with a whole lot around here. They're out of Amarillo, but they were able to knock off Stephenville last week and at 42-35 in a game that obviously I think was an upset for a lot of people. So Salina is still playing, and that's a team obviously that Gunner lost to, and so these are two programs that's it. Against 3A competition, they have dominated. Their only losses are because they went bigger, and I'm sure it's sort of the same thing out there. Wall's been really good. Like I said, the last 5 or 10 years, they have trouble finding people to play out there. They've got to go bigger and play some people or play some really good 2A programs because people don't want to play the 2A programs out there just to play people. And so they did have a couple of close games that were after losing to Brownwood. They beat Jim Ned by a point, 25-24. They only beat Monahans 27-20, but they have been on a roll, especially since district play started. In their last, I think it's the last 9 games, they have held an opponent to single digits in 7 of those 9 games. Or it's 6 of the last 8, I think. And then the other game it was 10 points. Since the playoffs started, 74-6 win against Anthony, 49-14 win over Childress, 56-21 against Littlefield, and 49-3 obviously last week against Canadian. They have not scored less than 48 points in the last 2 months. And, like I said, outside of that loss to Brownwood where they scored 7 points, they've only scored under 30 3 times, and that was the first 3 games of the season. Since then, everything has been at least in the 40s, except for 42 has been the lowest, except for a 33-10 win over Idalou. So they have a really good offense. It seems like it's more pass based than not. They have 2 really good receivers that have a lot of the same numbers. The quarterback is not a running quarterback. They do have, I would say a fairly decent running game. They do have a 1,000-yard rusher. It's obviously an offense that's been really good, putting up a lot of points, a lot of yards, and they've been holding people down. But you say the same thing about Gunner. We've talked about getting to this point in the season, and again, we have talked about it every week since they started 1-2. They lost those 2 games to Anna and Salina. And again, you look at what they have done against their level of competition. They have only allowed more than 2 touchdowns once during this 11-game winning streak. That was against Blue Ridge, the 52-21 game. Again, since those losses, you're talking about a defense that has allowed 7, 6, 0, 7, 21, 0, 0, 0, 14, 14, 7. And again, offensively, since that time, 49 points, 42 points, 69 points, 65 points, 52, 49, 63, 48, 45, 44, and then 33 this last week has been the worst effort. And before that, the worst effort was 42 during this 11-game win streak. I think this is going to be a really good game. I think you have to look at Gunner as the favorite. They are the 2-time defending champ. They are the team to beat. And until somebody beats them, or at least they've shown some semblance of an issue on either side of the ball, that what is this how are you going to beat this Goliath that is steaming towards a third straight championship? But I think, I said it going into the Jacksboro game. I thought that was the potential of where you could see teams that might be, it's going to get harder each round, and I think that's been the case. I think obviously Holiday's defense was pretty stinking good, all things considered. You said they gave up 33 points. I thought for the most part they did a pretty good job. Obviously the special teams return, that's not on them. So that they basically allowed, like I said, three field goal or three touchdowns and 2 field goals to the offense. And I think Wall might be a little bit better on both sides of the ball than what Holiday was. Obviously, they're coming off. It's always interesting. You get to this point. We talk about teams that have experience, teams that know what they're doing. Again, Gunnar has been here for 9 years in a row. It's the expectation. All these kids have been here now, because of call-ups and just being in the program. Everybody, the seniors have been here 4 years in a row. This is the best year for these kids at Wall. You look on the other side of the bracket, the winner of this game takes on the Woodville-Tidehaven winner for the state championship. Obviously, Tidehaven is a name that is familiar at this time of year because that was the matchup last year in the championship game, Gunnar versus Tidehaven. Woodville is the newcomer on that side of the bracket. I think there are a lot of people who think that Woodville is going to come out of that side of the bracket. Tidehaven obviously lost some of their key guys that got them all the way to state last year. But again, Tidehaven is back here in the Final Four. You cannot discount what it's like for a program that knows how to win, that knows how to get here because they've been here before, and they're not afraid of the moment. They're not afraid of the situation. They're not afraid of, oh my God, this team's on the other side. And I think you have that set up for both of these teams in Gunnar and Tidehaven with opponents that are dealing with that for the first time. I think Wall's obviously better than Holiday. And so I could see this being a bit of a tussle. I don't know for sure with some injury stuff on both sides of the ball. Obviously, we said Colin Peacock's not going to play for Gunnar. There's everybody. There's some other guys banged up, but last week was a physical game. There's word on the Wall side that there could be some injuries. That's just this time of year. It's unfortunate, but when you play 14 games, nobody's going to be 100%. I don't think weather's going to be a factor. We'll have to see as the week goes on. But if you have a team that likes to throw the ball like Wall does, that could be a potential issue if it's windy. That's something to look at as well. I think it's gonna, like I said, I think it's gonna be a great game. 3A Division II state semifinal, 4 p.m. on Friday, Abilene Christian University. 12-2 Gunnar, 13-1 Wall, playing for the right to get to AT&T Stadium in Arlington on December 19th to play for a championship. If Gunnar gets there, they have a chance to go for 3 straight. Wall's trying to get there for the first time in over a decade and try to chase their first state championship. I'm just excited that it's not Canadian. I know a lot of people are we're looking forward to that. They love that sort of thing. I mean, I love it to a point, but I think it's fun to get a new team sneaking in here, and obviously they earned it with what they did against Canadian last week. So Wall's definitely not going to be a slouch. There's nobody at this point. Like I said, the Final Four is something special, and we'll see if Gunnar's able to keep this thing going. for another week and play for a championship. And I will say here on the podcast, we very much appreciate Frontier Golf Carts Texoma. Experience the thrill of savings to celebrate their new Denison location, proudly serving the greater Texoma area, where they're launching with the lowest prices of the year. This marks an exciting new chapter in the 11-year history of Frontier Golf Carts as they expand from their original location in Salina. For their grand opening, come see the awesome collection of new carts with up to $1,500 off, including the 2024 Frontier EV Lightning F4 with all seats facing forward. New lithium battery powered golf carts with backup cameras and touchscreen entertainment start at $7,495. Visit frontiergolfcarts.com or check out their Facebook page for the latest specials. And I would like to thank them as the season is starting to come to an end. Frontier Golf Carts Texoma came on as a sponsor this year. They jumped in both feet right away, and we really appreciate that. And like I said, if you are interested in wanting to sponsor the podcast next year or become a sponsor of something else here as part of the All-Texomaland stuff that we put out, we have a football player of the year, athletes of the week, all these things. Contact Renee Marler at rmarler@cherryroad.com. She's the one to talk to. We've got at least one more of these here on the podcast because we go until the last team is out, and we've only got 2 weeks left of that to potentially happen. But if you want to jump on for 2025, like I said, we're in week 16. You're getting at least 16 of these podcasts at a minimum, or I guess technically 17 because we're going to have one next week no matter what. But Frontier Golf Carts Texoma jumped on, and we really appreciate them supporting the podcast. And I appreciate you guys for supporting the podcast. The clicks, listening whenever you can. We try to bring you, a little extra than what you get on the website and in the paper. But that's there as well. So you can follow us on social media. Follow me on Twitter /X at Jason Del Rosa. You'll get all sorts of stuff there. And on our social media with Facebook, either the Herald Democrat page, or if you just want the high school football stuff in your feed, or the place to go is the All-Texomaland page. We got basketball in full swing. We got district play for some teams in girls basketball starting this week. Almost everybody, I think, is going to be starting in district basketball next week. And then we got the Christmas tournaments. We'll have the All-Texomaland teams for cross country, volleyball, and football when we get back from the Christmas break. And everything with the fall sports is officially done once football's done. And then soccer's around the corner. Baseball and softball will get their practices going. Before you know it, it never stops. One rolls into the other, and there's always something to find. Like I said, if at my Twitter /X page, at Jason Del Rosa, or with our Herald Democrat or All-Texomaland pages on Facebook, you'll find all you need to know: scores, stats, the whole, who's playing well, what's going on, what the teams in Texoma are doing, depending on the sport. So, if you're gonna make the trip out to watch this Gunner Wall game, please travel safe. It's gonna be a long drive both ways, and it's that time of year. So let's all be safe Friday afternoon, and we'll talk to you next week on the Herald Democrat Sports Podcast.